Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. If you're new here, our intention is to provide you with impactful, educational, and realistic information to help you progress on your journey to live wellness on purpose now and for future generations. This podcast is brought to you by Joanne's Place Health Foods, which is located in Peterborough and Lindsay, Ontario. My name is Marissa Laughlin. I am a holistic nutritionist and your host for the podcast. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. I'm really looking forward to today's episode because I have asked my colleague Ada Densa-Kovalehi to join us to share with you all about the importance of choosing organic products to reduce your exposure to glyphosates. So before we get to the details about glyphosates, let's start by welcoming Ada onto our podcast. Good morning, Ada. Welcome to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. How are you today?
Oh, Marissa, I'm wonderful. Thank you. You're good?
I'm good. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. So I wanted to talk about glyphosates because this is a really big topic that I don't think enough people are mindful of or even aware that this could be a root factor to many of their health concerns. So before we dive into all of those details, how about you share with our listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what your position is at Joanne's Place?
Oh, I'll gladly do that. My name is Ada Densa-Kovalehi. I've been with Joanne's Place probably almost 25 years. Started out as a part-time job on the weekend because I really wanted to stay connected with healthy living, and which is my passion, by the way. And it's morphed into more than just staying in touch with the field. I now look after the majority of the supplement ordering at Joanne's Place. And I feel it's vitally important to look at ingredients in general. And glyphosates definitely is one of my concerns as well. I'm the wife of Peter Leahy, who runs Maryland Organics. Peter has been certified organic for the last probably almost 30 years now, because I'm adding up my daughter's ages, but I believe it's 30 years, if not more. We certainly have adopted that lifestyle. It's not just on the farm. I recall having visitors coming and saying, gosh, you're not just farming organically, your whole house is organic. Because whenever you open my cupboards or anything, we try to live that lifestyle. Realizing what detriment chemicals and all herbicides, pesticides can have in our environment and on the individual, animals, everybody, including microorganism. I always applaud my husband for his practices, and it's not easy. It's very labor intensive, hard on your body for years, but because we have invested a lot of time and also our entire philosophy into sustainability and organic farming, it's the way we believe it is the way to go.
Absolutely. So some of our listeners may be familiar with the name Maryland Organics if they've shopped in the store, but for our listeners who may not know, what are some products that you have out at your farm?
Thanks for asking. We have livestock, so we have beef, which is sold at Joanne's Place under the name Maryland Organics. So you can get ground, we have steaks, you name it, we have all the cuts. My husband also runs a mill, so we mill flour. Any grain, every grain. Spelt is our main grain that he grows, but he also has other mixed cereals. I believe he now does oat flakes. He's always looking at other opportunities, how to serve our customers best. So if they come and buy the flour or the grain, is there another opportunity? So buckwheat groats, rolled oats. What else can I think of? Feed, animal feed he sells. So we have customers, chicken, they raise chickens. We have customers with hogs. We have customers with smaller animals, goats, you name it. So Peter actually formulates, or he knows what is necessary in terms of protein to custom make feed for your animals. hay, but the hay he grows now he mainly needs for his own livestock. Straw, which is sort of a byproduct, but still people use it as bedding. People use straw to grow mushrooms. Never thought of that. So yeah, we make our own maple syrup. So here's maple syrup. In the summertime we have eggs, we have chickens, we have meat chickens. Yeah, so
Peter's busy.
He's very busy. Absolutely.
That's great. So we're going to dive into what it means to be certified organic in relation to glyphosates in just a minute. But first off, aren't familiar with what glyphosates are, I just want to give you a quick background. So glyphosates are Canada's top selling weed killer, and it is actually the top ingredient, commonly known as Roundup. It's very inexpensive, it's a broad spectrum herbicide, and it's used to increase crop yields, as well as many other reasons, but it is heavily sprayed on so many crops in Canada and also across the world. So we should be concerned about this on our food because it's been linked to so many different health concerns: gut health, infertility, birth defects, neurotoxins, DNA damage. There's so many things that these glyphosates can impact. And they're very hard to avoid unless we are being mindful of what foods we're consuming and what type of certifications that they have on these foods. They can be found in our water, on our food, as I said, in the air, our soil. So it's very hard to navigate whether you're consuming it or not. But what we do know is when we choose certified organic foods and soil regenerative foods, we can reduce our exposure to these glyphosates. So first and foremost, what types of crops are typically sprayed with glyphosates in Canada?
Main crops that come to mind is corn, so Roundup ready crops, so corn, soya, canola, peas, pulses. It's very misleading because these are the heaviest sprays, because Roundup ready meaning, and of course GMO, that the fields are prepared by being sprayed, which kills all the weeds. Then the crop is planted, so the corn is planted. And then this is not the only time that Roundup or glyphosates are used. They're used also during the growing period. Sometimes to help the crop, as Marissa said, to increase yield. So they spray it again before harvest, so the crop has an advantage, so it's not being outperformed by weeds. So all the nutrition, or if there's any nutrients left, that they go into the crop rather than into the weeds that have actually grown in between the corn, because now we're finding that some weeds are becoming glyphosate resistant. They're stronger, they become stronger over time. When we think of antibiotics, similar idea, because glyphosates are actually a broad spectrum antibiotic.
So when something is certified organic, does that mean that they can't use glyphosates as an herbicide, or is there any type of regulation around that?
It's absolutely no. It's an absolute not. Ever, never. And that would certainly, we don't know enough about it, but when you think of consistency of soil, we know there's a lot of microorganism in the soil. We know that plant is healthier the more microorganisms are in the soil. The more microorganisms are attached to the root system. We know the plant is stronger, more viable, it's more nutritious. Therefore, glyphosates are totally off the table when it comes to certified organic.
What about certification of non-GMO products? Does that mean that there's no glyphosates, or does it have to be organic?
It has to be certified organic. It's interesting. A lot of glyphosates, Roundup, is used on non-GMO soya beans per se. Non-GMO crops, that's just a misnomer. It's not genetically modified, but glyphosates are used. It's interesting also that glyphosate phosphoric acid is used in raising or creating GMO crops, right?
Wow.
GMO organism.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners reduce their exposure to these glyphosates?
So interesting, right? I think environmentally, if you're out and about and a crop is sprayed and there's whatever, you can't avoid it, but you certainly can avoid it by selecting your foods very purposefully. Very it has to be very mindful, especially when you're feeding young children. And the label, as Marissa mentions, GMO free sounds great, not genetically modified organism free, but it's not glyphosate free. So it's not free of any of the, when I call it poison, but I can't go as far because the government of Canada tried to increase the legal amount of glyphosates found in food, and it was tabled this spring because there was an uproar by the population of Canada, and I hope that keeps up. Because they're saying they're safe. Perhaps safe if you buy haphazard, eat something and you eat it once. If you eat it in every single food do you serve at your table every day, how can that be safe? It's accumulative. I believe it stays in your body definitely more than 1 day and definitely more than 10 days. In the soil, we don't know. There's different numbers. Does it go into the groundwater? Yes, it does. It leaches into the groundwater. Then there's arguments for glyphosate, of course, by the industry. If you see any studies, make sure you look at the source of the studies, who conducted the study. Often when I look at studies, I find that they're actually conducted by the industry, for the industry, and that is very misleading, and it's neglect, I feel, of proper studies and science. But glyphosates to avoid them is very difficult. I would say if your budget allows, look at certified organic foods, because we know that is the only way you can avoid them purposefully. Yes, do I eat out? Of course I eat out. But would I eat food every day that I know has been sprayed multiple times? This includes coffee. Shockingly, yes, coffee, because coffee is one of those plants that does not do well with any weeds. It is constantly outperformed by any kind of weed. So they spray glyphosates on coffee. If it's not organic coffee takes a lot of tender care to produce coffee beans, labor intensive, so of course it's more expensive, but if you love your cup of coffee as much as I do, can only be organic. Cocoa, it's sprayed on rice, all the cereals. You don't believe when you start looking at all the foods where you find glyphosates, is shocking. It's found in eggs because of the feed that is being fed to the chickens. It's found in animals all over the world. It destroys microorganisms. It has actual very negative effects on bumblebees. To find out that the bee population is actually dying off due likely to glyphosates, because also our butterfly population, glyphosates kill milkweed. We have no more milkweed, which is a main food for our monarch butterflies. So very, very sad picture. I believe, when coming back to the bumblebees, there's only 8 states in the United States that actually still have a healthy population of bumblebees. 8 out of 50.
Wow.
So very sad. So try to avoid it as much as you can.
Yeah, I think the most important thing there is it's literally on and in everything.
It is.
So when we talk about our exposure to glyphosates, it's not just one particular food. It's so many foods, and when you're consuming those foods every single day and that accumulates in the body, that can be built up very quickly. And honestly, I believe it's why we've seen such a rise in so many autoimmune conditions, health concerns that are just elevated or come on very quickly in an onset as well. Just high exposure to essentially another toxin.
Yeah. My largest and biggest concern is gut health with glyphosates. It's actually used as an antibiotic in the Southern Caribbean. It's cheap, that's why it's used. When you think of consuming antibiotics on a daily basis and what that does to our microbiome, it's very scary. Working in a health food store, our Our biggest category, likely, that I see from a purchaser's point of view, is digestive disease.
Yeah.
So digestive disorders, digestive everything. People have such enormous problems with their digestion, and we now know that the microbiome is connected. So our gut versus the brain is communicating. We have gut bacteria that communicate with brain bacteria, vice versa. We now know that. It's actually a science now. And knowing that, the less bacteria you have to communicate, the less healthy you might be. And this is a sad prognosis. And when you think of our children, their small growing bodies being inundated with antibiotics on a daily basis, it's frightening.
Yes, that exposure is so high for children. So do you believe that when food is sprayed with glyphosate, that the nutritional value will decrease as well?
From what literature tells us, and this is most recent literature, 2021, glyphosate interferes with, I believe, amino acid production uptake in the plant, number one. People say that the mineral content of the plant is less. Thinking of magnesium per se, glyphosate binds to minerals and hinders the absorption into the plant. So I would say, from what I've read, I would say yes. The likelihood is definitely there. Also, the amino acids, it's a phosphoric acid that binds. People with gut issues, rigidity, we know that our gut is a very flexible, pliable wall, and the more glyphosates are consumed, the more rigid. This is from people who do research. It's sort of I would say, still a novelty research, but they're connecting it with severe gut issues, because what it does to the gut in terms of amino acids. We know glycine is a very simple amino acid, and for some reason, this is what literature says, they don't know quite yet why, this glycine is replaced by components of the glyphosate. So very scary, which makes the gut lining more rigid and may explain some of the issues that people are experiencing. I'm not a scientist. I can just review some literature, and from what I've looked at, it's not very promising.
Yeah. And what we know in terms of gut health, when our digestive system is compromised, not only do we have these digestive issues like gas and bloating, IBS, and so on, but it also leads to nutritional deficiencies in our cells because we can't break down this food, and also not able to absorb the nutrients from it, if there is any nutrients to be absorbed as well.
Indeed, right? It makes only sense.
So with glyphosate exposure, what we're saying is definitely, first and foremost, organic is the best choice. Yep. Now, do you believe there's anything that people could do to offset their exposure to glyphosates, like maybe lifestyle changes or supplements that could help to support their bodies?
Mm-hmm. So, of course, you and I agree, lifestyle changes. So, processed food. Try to stay away from highly processed food, because it's not sometimes one component, it's many different foods from different sources mixed into highly processed foods. Again, many sources of glyphosates. Different crops are sprayed differently, and so the accumulation is high. Some crops, sunflowers, are sprayed for harvesting as well, right? So we really have to choose, pick and choose. I always used to say, make your fats definitely certified organic, because toxins like to accumulate in fatty tissue, in fats that you consume. I think I still stick to that. But make your food that you consume most often, everyday foods, organic. The occasional food that you indulge in, or when you're out, I always say, let your body make that decision for you. If you think too negatively about food, it won't be nourishing you. So, be graceful, give yourself some grace. But if you eat something every day, if you drink something every day, more than once a day, your children really pay attention, especially vegetarians and vegans. If it's not certified organic, you're consuming a lot of glyphosates, unfortunately. GMO-free is not a guarantee that it's glyphosate-free. Actually, the opposite. GMO-free often is heavily sprayed with glyphosates. More than that, I would definitely pay attention to my digestive tract. I would add probiotics. A must. If you don't want buy the supplements, think of probiotic foods, fermented foods, your kefir, your sauerkraut, your kimchi, your tempeh, very beautiful protein that has been fermented. There are many, and we have now a lot of fermented foods that are on the market that are actually very tasty. And when it comes to neurological health, I would definitely say think of antioxidants. Turmeric 1, the curcumin, we know can cross blood barrier. So that's one that I often say is a really good product to consider. So are your grapeseed extracts, your the green tea, and so forth. Drink lots of green tea. I love green tea, but make it certified organic. Magnesium, we know mineral content is very low in some of those foods. You definitely want to boost your magnesium and other minerals. I always suggest as a foundation, try to use a really good multivitamin and see how you feel, because once you start feeling good, you want to proceed feeling good. So it's a process, as we always honor that process. Start with one or two, protect yourself, protect your cells. We now know ashwagandha is actually a rejuvenation herb. We know it's an adaptogen, supports your adrenals. But what they're finding now too is it actually helps you make more DHEA, which is one it's one of those hormones that keep you young. So if you can take anything, take some certified organic ashwagandha. Other than that, Marissa, you're also the expert in that field in terms of foods high in antioxidants.
Yeah,
would you agree?
I would agree on all of those. I think even a probiotic, I almost recommend it more than a multivitamin these days, because it just is the foundation for everything. Gut health, mood regulation, elimination. So probiotics, absolutely. But first and foremost, diet is the most important piece, because if we are constantly over consuming foods that are problematic for our body, like glyphosate rich foods, the supplements are there for a great support, but you're almost working against each other if you're not also prioritizing your food. Again, finding the balance between what food you consume every single day, making organic, I think is really important. And again, in our podcast in April, we talked about conventional versus certified organic foods with a couple other staff members. And what we said in that podcast was that we are really happy to see that the bridge of conventional versus organic food, it's starting to close. It's going to be a smaller price change between the two, because people are demanding organic products. They're realizing how important that is. So that's fantastic to see, and I hope to continue to see that for sure. And also it might look like your budget changes a little bit in terms of where your money goes. I think that it's definitely doable when people are looking at their health in terms of what foods they consume on a regular basis. But in terms of supplements, I agree. Antioxidants, I mean, everybody wants to age gracefully, and definitely probiotics for sure.
And once you change your approach to food, what I had been finding in the past, when you start making more things, let's say you make a soup, it actually saves you money. When you start looking at what you've been buying that's already processed and ready meal, when you start making it, you actually, the produce, and you start, I always think, oh, I can make that. Oh, I can make that. I'm not paying that. I can make that. And once you do that, you realize, oh, this actually, my ingredients render more than one batch. I can make many more. I can, I have all the ingredients on hand. So once you start making small changes, it's amazing what you actually save.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I did a YouTube comparison between a recipe for two, and I think it was like a chicken fajita recipe, organic versus conventional. It was like 28 cents difference for the entire recipe. So although it can be, I don't even want to say it seems like a lot of front, because it really doesn't if you're looking at whole foods versus packaged food, because we know that packaged and processed food can be more expensive when it's organic. But whole foods, once you kind of look at the big picture, it definitely is not that much of a gap.
And also when you get supplements, we try as purchasers to find the best. Natural Factors per se, one of our favorite companies, they actually have all their ingredients, all their raw materials tested for all the toxins, for GMO, including glyphosates. So when I, as a buyer, I can very concretely say that choosing Natural Factors gives me that assurance that the raw materials, all the ingredients in the product has been tested and they're free of those ingredients. And that's a very important link as well between number one, lifestyle, food, and then supplementation. What are my supplements looking like? Where am I buying my supplements? Did I get them? I don't know. Yes, they were cheap, but are they actually up to spec? Do they test non-GMO? Do they test non-glyphosate? So all of those things are very important, and that's where I come in at the store level. I'm talking now being a buyer rather than farmer's wife, but very important to pay attention to those details.
Absolutely.
As well.
And on a previous podcast, Sarah and I actually talked about what it looks like to actually bring a product in, the standards, looking at the ingredients, seeing where ingredients are sourced from, and that's a whole process on its own. So that's great. So a lot of great information here today talking about glyphosates. I think what we can sum up to our listeners is just be mindful of how much you're consuming of those glyphosate-rich foods, and start with those everyday foods, and then eventually your lifestyle will adapt to changing those foods that you consume if they are glyphosate-rich foods.
Just one thing I want to mention, which is another frightening fact, that as some of the countries around the world have discontinued the use of glyphosates, Canada, North America is going up.
Yeah.
Every year it's increasing. Very frightening.
It's very scary. So although we love Canadian food, I think Canadian organic food is really, really important. But doing your research as well, finding some reputable information that isn't driven by the opposite people funding that research as well is important.
Go to your local small farmers who don't use glyphosates and ask them, what are you using as a pesticide? I want to know, because I want to know what food I am putting on the table for my family. I care about my family. Very
and
important.
Those farmers should be able to tell you that information.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If they're being transparent.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast, Ada.
My
really
pleasure.
Appreciate all of your information. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you. Amazing. Thanks again, Ada, for joining us today on the podcast. It's always so inspiring listening to your knowledge. Thanks again for everyone who tuned in for the episode today. If you want to learn more about the difference between certified organic and conventional food, I will leave the link to that podcast in the description below for you to check out. All right, that wraps up today's episode, and you guys know what to do next. Be sure to hit subscribe to our channel so that you do not miss a notification as soon as a new episode is released, and be sure to continue to share on social media that you're listening to the Wellness on Purpose podcast.